My name is Chris Straub. I'm from the Amr Foundation. And I just wanted to ask about the U.S. government as a whole. From your point of view in AID and the meetings you go to, is the interagency looking at rebalancing our assistance to Egypt? You recall Tom Friedman's idea about 6 weeks ago that we ought to take $100 million of military assistance and build 10 high-tech high schools with it across Egypt. But just not endorsing that idea necessarily, but are we looking at rebalancing and moving things more to the civil side now?
I tell you right now, it's still early days. Our disposition has been to keep an even keel, and we have not. I mean, within USAID, we have not been really engaging in the kind of discussions that you're suggesting. We feel that what we've really done, this sort of reprogramming of $150 million, is very strong. It's very significant. And what we want to do is we feel that is the appropriate amount of funding to get us through this next period, to get us through this fiscal year, and to move us to a period when, as a new Egyptian government emerges, we can have a dialogue about how to move forward on that. But for now, we feel that, in the context of our budget constraints at home and in the context of our overall relationship, that's the way to go. And I should add that our relationship through which that military assistance took place over the past decades, I think was extremely instrumental in guiding Egypt to a happier place than it might have otherwise been. But that's not for me to say. You should ask my colleagues at the Department of Defense on that.
Thanks, Kate. Barbara Slavin from the Atlantic Council. I want to ask both of you about the challenge presented by the Muslim Brotherhood. Is the Muslim Brotherhood eligible to get some of this money from the U.S. government, or are they barred from it? We saw in the constitutional referendum that they had a lot of clout. They were able to basically convince a lot of people to vote yes. They seem to have more organizational ability than any other group. But they put some limitations on their participation in the upcoming elections. How does the U.S. government see it? How does IRI see it? Thanks.
From the U.S. government perspective, I mean, I should say that our disposition towards the Muslim Brotherhood hasn't changed dramatically, but we just basically look forward to working with civil society organizations as appropriate, and we're going to just assess, each application as it comes in. But our disposition has not changed dramatically. So you would not work with them? That's my answer.
Tom? It's going to be an issue, very certainly. In September elections, Muslim Brotherhood is going to be saying the U.S. government is funding these other parties and these other political groupings, even though no party or political grouping is being funded. But they're receiving technical assistance that's available to the different political actors in Egypt. So it is going to be an issue. When I made an initial visit some years back to Egypt, and we used private funding to do that, rather than USG funding, we did meet with Muslim Brotherhood representatives because at that time, there was no Muslim Brotherhood to go to. They're scattered. And they indicated that they would be interested in participating in training, democracy training. But then since that time, we have not done that. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they actually do now that they are forced to compete openly. And I would just say I don't see the referendum as necessarily pointing out their undue strength, because there were reformers, there were other people, secular reformers, who were a part of the yes vote as well, such as Anwar Sadat of the Reform and Development Party. Most of the secularists were involved in the no vote, it's true, but there were still a few. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that works through.
Ken Meyercord, World Docs. You give the impression that both your organizations were pleased with recent developments in Egypt and look forward to working on promoting democratic processes. Are your institutions hopeful for, and would they support similar developments in, say, Morocco or Jordan or Saudi Arabia?
Morocco, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. Okay, so
Our closest friends in the region.
yeah, got it. So I mean, first of all, USAID doesn't work in Saudi Arabia. I mean, we work in poorer developing countries. So we do work in Egypt, and we do work in Jordan, we do work in Morocco, and we have been doing democracy and governance and civil society work in both of those countries and for many years. In fact, I just immediately prior to coming here got off the phone with the head of our Morocco office talking about our democracy and governance program in Morocco, which has been ongoing, and which we plan to continue to use and engage. And I'm sure you may be aware, although it hasn't been in the headlines given all that's going on in the world and between our budget crisis and transformations in Egypt and Tunisia and Libya and the earthquake in Japan. But there is a process that the King of Morocco has launched. He's sort of set up a commission for democratic reform, and our disposition is that we're enthusiastic about it. We want to see an Arab world where there are citizen-led decisions as a part of society, and so we are very enthusiastic to see the announcements that have been made already in Morocco and some in Jordan as well. There's a similar process in Jordan, and we are partnering and engaging with both the government and civil society in both cases. So Saudi Arabia is not an area that my institution works in.
And we also don't work in Saudi Arabia, but we've had long-standing programs in Morocco and Jordan. And I can tell you there is, at times, more fast, at other times, a bit more slow path of progress going on in both Morocco and Jordan. They are moving forward. At times it slows down a bit. Other times it goes quite speedily. It was just grinding down to a complete halt in Egypt. There was no reform. And I believe one of the straws that, broke the camel's back, so to speak, was the idea of seeing Gamal Mubarak coming in as the next ruler. There just was no end in sight to people. And so I think that's what sort of drove people to this decision. We don't work in Saudi Arabia, as I said. But as for IRI, we think these are great things that are occurring across the region.
There's a question in the back here. Ali Musa, Project on Middle East Democracy. Mr. Garrett, you mentioned that you were waiting on some registration for IRI to participate. Does this affect all international organizations? Can anyone operate, and what processes do you know of are in place to allow IRI and other organizations that might be facing a similar problem to operate? Second question, you mentioned that some kind of new strategy was needed regarding economic development. Could you perhaps be more specific as how you would deviate from business as usual given the new situation?
The registration process in 2005, when we entered that, the standard way it worked in Egypt was NGOs could apply and then they could start working pending the final registration, because that often took many, many, many years for everyone, not just us. And so that's how we were proceeding. We registered, we got our documents, as did NDI and IFAS, the Electoral Management Consulting Group. And we were told, well, it's different for you. You have to have the final papers before you can register.